Hey everybody, it's Maggie Mulher from Modern Salon TV here. I am here with the Ricardo Santiago, and you can follow him at,
Stylist Ricardo Santiago.
and I know many of you do already. We are here at the Modern Salon Artist, I'm looking at it, Artist Session Influencer Series. It's something cool. It's our first time doing this where we have all these phenomenal influencers here. If you just pan, all of our favorite influencers are here. They all had education yesterday, and then today everyone's getting ready to do a big photo shoot. But I asked Ricardo, tell me when you have something special going on, and right now you're talking about root shadow?
Yes, so I wanted to just show like my personal way of shadow rooting. It seems to work really well for me, so I figured why not share it with everyone. I saved the front quadrant to do here, but I figured visually it was easy to demonstrate on the back as well. So when I do a shadow root, I always start on the bottom, and everything that I do kind of starts at a horizontal like this. And typically, I like to just bring that all the way up and drag down about an inch. And I don't really stretch that any more or less as I move my way up. What I do is I start to change my angle. And by changing my angle, what it does is it starts to break up the root line because the hair falls and lays in different ways. So I'll bring it up this way, and as soon as I hit the occipital, which is right where that curve of the head really starts to kick in, then I'll keep my lower point here, and it starts to pivot. So my angle will start coming this way until eventually it ends on a vertical. And by doing that, what it does is, like I said, this hair, I'm now over directing it, and every time I take another angle, I'm over directing a little bit more forward. And when that falls and the hair's done, then what it does is it completely breaks up the root because it's always laying in a different place, so it never lays on top of itself to create a hard line. So it automatically diffuses it without having to like try to play with your eye and adjust how much you're stretching it or not stretching it. For the front, I thought it'd be easy to just kind of show it here. But I do the same thing in the front, so I start at more of a horizontal because I like to follow the hairline. I think that it's to create a more natural fluid finish. It's good to use the angles that the head's giving you. So I start horizontally here, and then obviously we switch to a diagonal right here. So I like to just paint that in at a diagonal. And I can't fully see what I'm doing because I'm standing behind her, but hopefully it looks right on the camera. So I'll take the first couple the same way at a horizontal here, and I try to keep my sections as clean as possible so that way I'm not dragging that base color through, and it'll work even though we're using fashion shades here. As you can see, all the colors that we're doing are very metallic, and I'm using basically the entire Joico metallic series with some colors that are popped in to create a little bit more dimension. So we've got a violet base that's going into a blue metallic, a green metallic, and then I threw in some warm tones because I think that it looks really pretty when you mix in warm with cools, especially in the metallic. So this is actually a custom mix of bronze, pink, and mauve quartz. And then we just have some straight up yellow for some fun pops.
And what brand are you using here?
I'm using all Joico. Yeah. So as soon as I get those first couple of slices done here, now I'm going to start to change my angle. So this is where obviously that face frame shape is starting to change, this whole perimeter. Now we're coming horizontal here, we go down vertically here, and then we have angles this way. So I figured if we just start taking everything at diagonal, then it works the same way on the front as it does in the back.
And you're using real tiny sections, correct?
Yeah, pretty fine sections. If you take too thick of a section, then you jeopardize your saturation, and then B, you're also not going to get a smooth effect. The finer your sections are, as you're shifting your angle, then the more it's going to diffuse that line. So I just try to keep it really fine. I don't work so fine when I'm actually in the melting process of it. So like when I'm working through mids and ends, I try to grab a little bit more because I can saturate more. I feel like just because my hands are a little bit bigger. But typically I would tell people to keep their sections pretty small and pretty thin. And then the other thing too is what helps with adjusting this angle in this way is as you start to pivot here, your angles actually line up with the back. So this angle lines up with the angle that we started to pivot here. So then these will actually fall in line backwards with the curve of the head, and then that again just kind of makes it more seamless all the way around.
Any tips on actually blending?
blending the colors together. Yeah. So I like to when I'm transitioning my colors. So I always say there's two really important keys to blending and melting your colors. The first one is saturation, so you have to make sure you have plenty of color, and the second is you have to see as your transition. So you have to see a transition color going from your base to whatever your mids to ends formula is. So I'm only melting two colors together, but in every section that I take, every slice, you're going to see a third color that gets created in between the two. So making sure that you have really good pressure, don't take too wide of a section. It's just like when you cut hair. If I were to try to take this wide of a panel and melt that all together, I'm going to have less tension at the base here of my fingers and at the tip. So I have to make sure that I'm working in an area that I'm going to have even tension. So I'll split that in half and then melt this part and then melt that part.
And you melt with your fingers?
Always melt with my fingers, yeah. I feel when you use the brush, it's just a little bit, like I do saturate really well going side to side, but the melting process, it's all done with the hands. These are our best tools, so why not use them, right?
And what about in the rinsing process? Any tips on that?
Yeah, so I rinse really cold. Like I gauge the temperature based on the client's reaction. So if they're not shaking or give me a look of death, then it's not cold enough. So then I make it a little bit colder. So once I get that,
Your poor model. She's like, wait, what did I hear?
she's like, "What'd you say?" It's okay. It's just for a few minutes. Yeah. And then I always start with the lighter color first. So like these little yellow pops that we put underneath, I will start with these and rinse them out really well and then try to lift them up and out of the way so that the dark color doesn't influence the lighter color. But that only happens with, especially with the Joico colors, it really only happens with yellow. If you're using any other colors, so I don't have to worry about bronze mixing in with the blue because I guess it's like the thickness, it's a very thick color. So they don't really, like you have to work it to get them to bleed. The only one that really catches, like I said, is yellow.
All right, so you're going to continue. I didn't want to interrupt you, and I told you we'd only do this for a few minutes. You're going to continue on a diagonal.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep working that same diagonal, but I'll start in the same fashion. Like my diagonal will get a little bit more dramatic as I start to get to the top. So this angle will just start shifting. So now I feel like this is my point, and I'll just continue to shift everything diagonally coming this way. And then eventually it'll end at a little bit more of a vertical, like that.
Oh, that's such a good tip. Alrighty, so we have a lot of people that say root shadow or shadow root. What is your preference?
Shadow root.
Shadow root. And what about color melting or color melding?
Melting.
Melting.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
I like to melt them.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us this time. So happy you're here. This has been a great 2 days, and thanks.
It's been an honor for me. Thank you guys.
An honor for us to have you here. Thanks for coming, and thank you guys for watching. And have a great shoot.
Yeah,
We're excited.
let's hope this looks good.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thanks.